On July 10, 2026, a Korean company most Americans had never heard of walked into Times Square and raised $26.5 billion in a single day. It was the largest US listing by any foreign company in history, bigger than Alibaba. The company is SK Hynix. It makes memory chips. And if you've used AI in the past year, asked a chatbot anything, made a single image, odds are you used its chips without knowing it. Here's the strange part. Back in the early 2000s, this same company was near bankruptcy, mocked at home as a national penny stock. A debt-crippled reject an American rival tried to buy for parts. Last time, we watched Coupang's flee Korea's system to become American on paper. This is the opposite story. A Korean company. America now wants so badly it will fight over its factories, its chips, and now its shares. This is how one of the biggest comebacks in Korean business became a company quietly powering the AI boom. To understand SK Hynix, forget the SK. It didn't start there. It began in 1983 as Hyundai Electronics, founded by Chung Ju-young, the Hyundai patriarch from our football episode. For years, Hyundai's chip arm was one of the world's bigger memory makers, always in Samsung's shadow. Then, in 1999, the Korean government pushed it into a merger with LG's chip business to build a national champion. It built a debt bomb instead. In 2001, memory prices fell by 80%. The company lost 5 trillion won in a single year, sold off everything that wasn't memory, and renamed itself Hynix. Then America came knocking. Micron, the US memory giant, offered to buy Hynix's chip business for about $3.5 billion. But it wanted the profitable parts and none of the debt, a deal that would have left Korea's banks holding the losses. So Hynix's board, its managers, and even its union did something rare in a crisis. They united, and they said no. Saying no kept the company alive, but barely. For the next decade, Hynix languished in creditor purgatory, controlled by the banks that had rescued it, passed from one would-be buyer to the next, unsold. Then, in 2012, came the bet many called insane. SK Group, a conglomerate known for telecom and oil with no chip experience at all, bought control for about $3 billion. It was one of the biggest acquisitions in Korean history at the time. Credit agencies downgraded the outlook on SK's telecom arm. Analysts called it reckless. Samsung, the crosstown rival, was worth more than 10 times as much on the market. The man who forced it through was SK's chairman, Chae Tae-won. What he wanted, he later said, was to turn a maker of plain, interchangeable chips into a company the world couldn't do without. It would take 14 years and a technology almost nobody believed in to find out if he was right. Here was the problem. In everyday memory, the kind in your laptop and phone, Samsung dominated. Bigger, richer, years ahead. SK Hynix couldn't win that race, so it went looking for a different one. It found a strange, unglamorous chip called high bandwidth memory, or HBM. Normal memory sits flat on a board. HBM stacks the chips into towers, wired together to move data at incredible speed. It was hard to build, expensive, and back in the 2010s, demand was thin. There was no AI boom yet to need it. In 2014, SK Hynix built the first commercial HBM, working with the chipmaker AMD. Then it stumbled. Early versions underperformed, Samsung pulled ahead, and, by the account of former executives, the company seriously debated killing the whole project. It didn't. It doubled down, betting that a coming wave of powerful new chips would need enormous amounts of fast memory. Chips like the ones NVIDIA, then known mostly for gaming, would soon build for AI. Then, at the end of 2022, ChatGPT arrived, and training AI, it turned out, needs one thing above almost all else: huge amounts of memory, moving impossibly fast. SK Hynix had spent years refining the exact chip the AI industry suddenly needed most. By 2024, it was first to mass-produce the advanced HBM that NVIDIA's top AI chips rely on. Today, it supplies roughly 60% of the world's HBM. The numbers that came next are almost hard to believe. In 2025, SK Hynix pulled in about $64 billion in revenue and $28 billion in profit, a 44% margin in a business that used to lose money for fun. And 2026 ran hotter still, a single quarter of it out-earned the entire year before. Then, in 2026, the thing no one saw coming. SK Hynix briefly passed Samsung to become the most valuable company on Korea's entire stock market. As one Seoul professor put it, nobody would ever have imagined it. The eternal number 2, the penny stock, had for now pulled ahead of Samsung. To be fair to Samsung, analysts widely say it had deprioritized HBM, judging the market too small, and it's now racing hard to close the gap. This is a lead, not a knockout. But right now, SK Hynix sits on a genuine bottleneck. The world can't make enough top-end memory, and SK Hynix makes the most of it. When OpenAI planned its giant Stargate project, the chairman said it asked for so much memory that supplying it would take 900,000 silicon wafers the disk's chips are printed on every month. So many, he admitted, he wasn't sure they could make it all. That brings us back to Times Square and to why a company already worth a fortune at home just sold a fresh slice of itself in America. Because SK Hynix now sits in the middle of the biggest rivalry on Earth. Start with China. More than 30% of its everyday memory is made in a single plant in Wuxi. But Washington has blocked foreign chip makers from freely upgrading their Chinese factories. The old blanket waiver is gone. Now they need year-by-year licenses, approved case by case for the very equipment those fabs run on. SK Hynix's China plants are, in effect, running but technologically frozen, able to operate but not to modernize. Then there's the United States. Washington's message to the memory giants has been blunt. Build on American soil or face tariffs, it has floated as high as 100%. SK Hynix is now building a plant in Indiana, and with this listing, $26 billion worth of its shares just listed on American markets. And back home in Korea, it's the crown jewel. Much of the whole stock market's rise this year comes down to SK Hynix and Samsung alone. So here's the Coupang mirror. Coupang escaped Korea's system to become American on paper. SK Hynix never left, and America is reaching in to pull it closer anyway. Same tension, opposite direction. But one hard truth hangs over all of it. Memory is a brutally cyclical business. Historically, every great boom ends in a glut, and the doubts are already showing. In late July, SK Hynix reported the largest quarterly profit in its history, and its stock dropped almost 10% because even a record fell short of what investors had bet on. The company says the AI boom isn't slowing. The market isn't sure. The shortage driving these profits is real today. Whether it lasts is the trillion-dollar question. So, what did American investors actually buy on July 10th? A slice of one of the most important companies they'd never heard of, the quiet Korean underdog that now underpins much of the world's AI. Back in 2003, Korea treated this company like a worthless penny stock. This summer, Wall Street fought to own a piece of it. The line between a Korean company and an American one keeps getting harder to draw, and we'll keep watching it blur. Next time, we trade chip factories for something you can taste. The spiciest noodle on earth, a near-bankrupt Korean company, and a viral dare that turned a small-town factory into a global empire. You've probably eaten the ending. Subscribe for the business stories nobody bothers to translate. See you there.